if you start early and you start building that engagement and attraction and show them what the art of the possible is, that is a great way to recruit people for the future.
Welcome to Leaders of the West, a podcast for innovators and changemakers. I'm your host, Jessie Jarvis, the founder of the West, and I'm sitting down with agriculturalists, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between with the goal of digging into the strategies, mindsets, and lessons that have been crucial to the success of ag and Western. Whether you're carrying on the next generation of your family's operation, starting something from scratch, or determined to climb up the leadership ladder, we're going to inspire you to continue to dream big, growing not just you, but the future of agriculture and Western as a whole. Let's go. It's the first 2 weeks of a brand new quarter, which can only mean one thing. Be a Maker School is open for enrollment. So what exactly is Be a Maker School? It's an online course platform specifically for Western trades. You can learn from home and at your own pace and join a community of makers and entrepreneurs who can support you as you build skills and confidence in your newfound hobby or career. Be a Maker School offers courses in equine photography, cinch making, rawhide and leather braiding, silversmithing and engraving, leatherwork and tooling, and then there's also a business course called The Business of Making, where I am one of the instructors. That course specifically details all of the business aspects behind being a maker. Different sales channels, shipping, marketing, website, branding, email correspondence, goal setting, and a number of other topics. As I mentioned earlier, Be a Maker School is only open for enrollment for the first 2 weeks of every quarter. So if you're interested now, it's definitely worth checking out. Otherwise, you have to wait another 3 months. You can grab all of the info at beamaker.school. Again, that website is beamaker.school. I can't wait to hear how you have inspired and fostered the maker that is inside of you. Welcome to a brand new episode of Leaders of the West. You guys are in for a real treat today. We are sitting down with an incredible guest, but before I get to that, I want to give you guys a little bit of backstory as to why this is somebody and a topic that I wanted to share with you guys. So one of the things that we are really familiar with in our industry are stock shows and rodeos. And we of the West have had the pleasure of working with a number of stock shows over the course of our existence. We've worked with the San Antonio Livestock Show and Rodeo. We have worked with the National Western Stock Show. We've worked with the Nile, Fort Worth, a number of rodeo organizations as well. And one of the things that I don't necessarily think that people understand inside of our industry and even outside of our industry is just the massive amount of impact that these organizations have, not only on their local communities, just as far as the influx of people coming into these communities and the dollars and the economic impact that are spent in those communities. The majority of these also have some kind of philanthropic arm. So they are giving back scholarships to students in the community, outside of the community, within the state. And it is just truly unbelievable when you put pen to paper. So today we are sitting down with Melinda Underhill, and she is the Chief Volunteer and HR Officer of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. And I know we are all familiar with the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. Of the stock shows and rodeos to exist, it is the largest in North America. And I learned this prior to sitting down with Mel, but it has a larger economic footprint than that of the Super Bowl. So if somebody wants to tell me that rodeo doesn't matter, I will raise you the fact that the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo does more for the community of Houston than the Super Bowl does wherever the Super Bowl is played each year. But one of the things that struck me and the reason that I wanted to have this conversation is the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo is ran through volunteers. There are about 150 people on staff. But then as far as the number of volunteers that it takes to execute the stock show and rodeo at the level at which it is, it takes 36,000 volunteers. And Melinda oversees all of that, whether it is staff or volunteers. And we really get down into the nitty-gritty of how to keep an organization like that on the tracks, especially when it comes to how do you align 36,000 volunteers and keep them rowing in the right direction? This story isn't necessarily as much about the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo as it is to how we can take this information and implement it into our own lives. I know for many of us, we sit on library boards or school boards, or we're part of our local fair and rodeo or something, and we're always dealing with volunteers. And one of the things that we deal with in that is, how do we make sure that we can continue to get volunteers without burning them out? And how do we get new volunteers interested and wanting to take part in the things that we're working with? So I hope that sets us up for an incredible conversation. I got so much joy with this episode and sitting down with Melinda. She is absolutely incredible. You guys are going to love her. And she is absolutely stunning as well, both inside and out. So here we have it. Welcome to the podcast, Melinda Underhill. Melinda, I am really looking forward to our conversation today. So to kick things off, if somebody is unfamiliar with the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, can you kind of give them the Cliff Notes version of what exactly it is and why it is just so monumental?
Wow. Okay. So it's hard to explain, but I will give you the Cliff Notes version. It is rodeo plus concert plus livestock plus carnival plus fun for your family, where you can do just about anything and you can shop.
I was going to say, you can't forget the shopping.
No, you can shop. And anytime we get someone here, like my daughter-in-law, who now lives in Houston, was from New York. And when she came for the first time, she was just like, wait, what? I mean, it is so huge and there is something for everyone. We have multiple stages, a huge carnival. We have fireworks and drones at the end of some of our days. You know, we have the rodeo, the real rodeo with the athletes and everything about it in the stadium and a concert. But outside we have food and, you know, all the kinds of food you want to find at a carnival, right? Everything dipped in butter and
Deep fried six
fried
times.
Stuff. Yeah, exactly. But then you can go inside to the center and see all the animals and see the kids showing their animals. And you can go see a horse show. It is so monumental. And I've been here 6 years and I still haven't seen everything. Like, you know, I still have checklists where I still want to go see events. So it's just kind of mind-blowing, actually.
It really is. And I'm so glad you used the word mind-blowing, because the thing I want to talk about next is something I consider to be mind-blowing. And that is the fact that it takes 36,000 volunteers to run the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo and it's 30 days long. Is that correct?
So we have a barbecue contest before the actual rodeo starts.
Okay.
That is 3 days. And then we take a break for a day and we clear like 250 tents off the ground. And then, yeah, I mean, so that's just amazing in and of itself. And then we have usually 20 days.
Okay.
Of rodeo and everything that surrounds that, the livestock show. But this year we're doing 21 days. So we've added on a day where we've already announced this, we're doing a concert with Cody Johnson. And so every few years we do what we call a 21st day show. So the last one we did, we had George Strait.
Okay. So it's always a proud Texan who is going to be this extra day. But I mean, even then, whether it is, 20 days or 30 days or whatever that looks like, it is still, even long before and long after the event, takes just so much work and is obviously part of that volunteer. But there are 109 committees and then 150 full-time employees. I mean, that, when you think about the magnitude of just that footprint, it's really hard to picture. So what surprises people most about how all of that comes together?
So first of all, the number of volunteers, right? The number of volunteers that it takes, but it's also the commitment of the volunteers. And Jesse, what most people don't see is it takes year-round work. That's what they don't see. So the 109 committees are literally like soup to nuts. We were talking to somebody the other day when we were talking about it's like chicks to concerts, right? I mean, it's just everything in between. So we have committees that are responsible for everything. So yes, we have 150 staff members, but we literally could not put on the show without the commitment of the volunteers. So there's something for everyone. We have a recycling committee. We have a committee that greets all of the exhibitors that are coming in with their animals, right? We have a committee that scans tickets in the stadium. We have committees that sell carnival tickets. We have committees to do everything. And so what I think people find so surprising is it's a giant machine, right? And how it all comes together. So staff works with volunteers, and the way the volunteer organization is structured is very important to how the show gets done. So we couldn't do it without them.
No kidding. So you are somebody who you personally have, your career is just really rooted in HR and leadership. What personally drew you to the mission of Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo and just the organization as a whole? How did you first get involved?
So when I joined the organization, my position was new, but it was focused on the volunteers. So it's not only focused on, it was about people, because that's what HR is about.
Mm-hmm.
But I had never worked with volunteers, and not at this scale, or an organization that had so much impact on the community. So those two things really what drew me to the role was that I was going to be able to work with all of these volunteers, which is really different than working with people who get paid,
Mm-hmm.
right, to do a job. But the impact that this organization has on the community is multifaceted. Not only do we provide scholarships to the youth of Texas, but we also provide opportunities for these young children who come show their projects, their pigs and their chickens and, their turkeys and their horses. And it's so inspiring to see how you can help provide these kids with an opportunity to fulfill their educational dreams where they might not otherwise be able to. And that is what people talk about. That is the impact. And so right now, even as I'm talking to you, I get a little bit of a chill. When you see some of these kids, I remember seeing one of the kids that won the steer contest. And it was the first time he won steer. He was reserve, which means he's second. So there's a grand champion and there's a reserve. Jesse, he was 9 years old. And so when they're asking him, how do you feel? The poor child, he is like, I'm really happy right now, But it's just when you see something like that and you think, what an impact we've made on this child's life who's not even in double digits yet.
Yeah.
So it's very inspiring to be a part of that.
I can only imagine. Well, and as you mentioned, you do have a very unique role because you are leading staff, which is full-time traditional employment. They get a check. And then you also are leading volunteers who are in a completely different role. So how do you balance the structure and the accountability of the professional workplace side, which is that full-time, part-time employee, versus the passion and more what we would consider to be like the flexibility of volunteer leadership? And I think that the reason that I want to talk about this is because there are so many groups and organizations and elements of our lives that rely on volunteers. And we also have heard and have seen and probably have been part of it ourselves about how we volunteered and then we've gotten burnt out. And so I think a lot of it starts with great management and leadership, but then also in really, walking the walk and in being that type of volunteer. But yeah, so I guess to circle back to the question, how do you balance that structure of leading employees and then also leading volunteers?
So the one thing that happens with staff and volunteers is that they understand they have to work together. So we work hard to help both organizations understand what the other is bringing to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the fantastic thing about the volunteer structure is that we're a giant organization, right? There's organizations that don't have 36,000 employees, right? Like volunteers. And so the structure of the volunteer organization is what makes the magic happen. So I could tell you a little bit about that, but it's just like your typical corporate structure with one big difference. And that is that anyone who is in a leadership position can only be in their position for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So they rotate every 3 years, whether you're an assistant cap. So the hierarchy is kind of assistant captain, captain, if you're large enough, vice chairman, chairman, and then there's a level above the chairman that's made up of what we call officers in charge. We also call them vice presidents. And those vice presidents have a group of committees they oversee. So they've also been chairman, and then they get kind of elevated. And then they report to the chairman of the board, which is also a volunteer position. And then we have like what we call an executive committee that helps drive some of the decisions. That structure ensures that there is good leadership, good management, but you're keeping the leadership fresh, right? So every 3 years. And I think sometimes in volunteer organizations, you can have leaders that might get stagnant, right? They've gotten stuck in their ways. They're not going to move. And Jesse, it is really hard to tell somebody who's giving you their free time and their talent that like it's time to go.
Yes, like we don't appreciate you, but we do. But that is a very difficult thing to tell somebody. And clearly that's why we don't, and why we have so many people who have probably overstayed their welcome, even though we still appreciate all the service that they've given us.
Exactly. So with 3 years, you get not only fresh, right? You get fresh eyes on the committee, but you also have a real line of sight to growth. So if you're a captain and you want to be a chairman, you understand that people are going to be rolling every 3 years. And so they can see very different than the corporate world, right? Where somebody
Yes.
can be in their job 10, 15 years. So you can see that growth. And that's what keeps people engaged if they really want to take on that responsibility, right? And in addition, we make very intentional investments in our leaders. So we have programs, we put programs in place since I've joined the organization that helps these leaders become the best leaders they can be. They've already gotten to that chairman role because they're very good at what they've done in their committee. But how do we ensure that they are being the best leaders and are aligned across the organization with one another and understanding how do we all work together to deliver this amazing experience of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo? So I think that also helps a lot. But with that structure, and we mix staff and volunteers in the leadership programs that we have so that they're learning together and they're learning to appreciate what each other brings to the table, which is very, very important. Because it would be easy for a volunteer to say, oh, well, you get paid for this, right?
Yeah.
And it would be, I think, harder, but staff can always think, well, you're just a volunteer, right? But of course, that's not what we encourage. So we encourage lots of collaboration and more development to make them the best leader they can be on both sides.
So communication has to be something that is absolutely vital and very, very intentional. What kind of tools or systems help keep everybody informed and aligned? Because it's not like we have a phone tree with all 36,000 numbers and Mel's going to call me and then I'm going to call my 2 people and they're going to call 2 people. So how does this work?
Yeah. So part of my team is an internal communications team. And their role is, so we basically send out newsletters to volunteers and we keep them updated on what's happening across the volunteer organization. Because if you're in a committee, it's just like being on a team in an organization. You know what your committee is doing, but you may not know what's going on across the organization. So we have those monthly updates and we have a fantastic open rate, Jesse. I mean, our open rate so we send it to 36,000 people, right? And our open rate averages like 70%, which is, as you know, having come from the business you've come from, right? It's really amazing. And so they're that committed, right? And so the other thing we do is we ensure that when there's announcements, so we will send announcements as well. And it's called a cascade. So we will start with the highest level of the organization so that they know, the executive committee, they know what's about to happen. And then we cascade it to the next level. and then the next level. So there's some time in between so that the chairman know what is about to go to the volunteers.
Right.
Be prepared.
Versus a blanket email to everybody, and then we're all finding this information out at the very same time.
That's right. And sometimes if we're doing something that requires preparation for the chairman, we will send them tools. We'll send them FAQs. We'll send them some insights so that they're prepared to answer any questions. And when necessary, we will meet with the officers in charge prior to that to make sure we understand what the sensitivities are. We understand what the questions are going to be. They're also fully prepared. So we do all of those things. During the show, we do kind of special newsletters every week where we are doing stories on other committees so that volunteers then also get like a literal view into some of the committees and what they're doing. So yeah, it's communication year round, monthly, and then ad hoc as we need to make announcements. So if we send a press release about, let's say, our educational commitment, when we do those, so like our educational commitment this year is almost $29 million, we will cascade that and then let them know, and then the public gets it. So our volunteers know before the public. Yes, which is super important, right? Because everybody like knows somebody who is working at the rodeo. And so they'll be like, oh, my neighbor works at the rodeo. I'm going to go ask them about this. So they would know before the public sees it.
I know we've talked about this. I'm still just stuck on the fact that there are 36,000 volunteers. To put that into perspective, that is more people than live in my entire county. And our county is larger than the state of Delaware, size-wise. So it's not like we live in a small county.
Yeah.
But when it comes to getting a group of people together, whether it's 36 volunteers or 36,000, it can be hard to make sure that everybody is being held accountable and really, rowing that ship in the same direction.
Yeah.
So how do you guys ensure those high standards without, again, like losing the heart or the spirit that make those volunteers want to continue to come back year after year?
So every committee has a set of requirements that each volunteer has to fulfill. So it depends on what the committee does.
Okay.
Some of our committees are sales committees, so they do fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
And some of our committees are operational. The volunteers are required to do so many hours. If you don't meet those requirements, at the end of the year, you get dropped from the committee.
Oh, okay.
Okay. In addition, when a volunteer fulfills their requirements, for the most part, some of it has to happen during show, they get a special badge. And that badge gets them onto the grounds for free and allows them to bring a guest.
Okay.
And it also gets them in the stadium every day to see the rodeo and the concert without a ticket. They don't have a seat, okay?
Right.
But they can watch the show. So they do get some perks. And there's a few other perks, like we will do a pre-sale for our concerts and let them get kind of first choice,
right,
so to speak. But for the most part, they all have these requirements. So if they don't fulfill their requirements, they get bumped from the committee. And some committees, it can take years to get on.
Okay. So there is definitely a level of accountability there. And I can imagine, like you said, when it is something that is so sought after and it's not very easy to get on a committee, people who have gotten there want to make sure that they are still there the next year and next year.
That's right. That's right. And so, and some committees actually have you acknowledge the requirements before you are allowed to join, so that you like put your name on a piece of paper and you know that this is how much money you need to raise and this is how many hours you need to dedicate, so that if volunteers ever, want to dispute that they understood that, they can say, well, you signed this piece of paper, you knew what the requirements are. So the accountability systems are pretty good.
Definitely put in place very strategically, which is no surprise. Let's talk a little bit about that, though, because you had mentioned that when it comes to captain and chairman, all of those positions are revolving every 3 years. So when it comes to identifying the next generation of leaders, is that something that volunteers are presenting themselves for? Or do you guys look at certain volunteers or notice things, qualities in them, and you encourage them to, like, you think they're going to be a great leader, so you encourage them to apply for those types of positions? How exactly does that, like, leadership identification work?
Yeah, that's such a great question because it's a critical part of our process.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that does differ across committees, but for the most part, below the chairman level, the leadership team will select people, but some committees have pretty formal leadership processes. So what they might do is say, we have X number of captains that are needed this year. Here's a way to apply. So they open an application process. Some are small enough that the leader will just identify people that want to be captains and will talk to them about that and then interview a group of people.
Okay.
At the chairman level, those people are selected by their officers. So the officers will identify candidates. So the current chairman, if they're outgoing, they will recommend people. But a lot of times the officers will also ask, are you interested in being a chairman? And if you are, submit your interest. So it really differs. But all of the selections, for the most part, are made by the volunteers. When they get to the officer level, our executive committee, which is the highest level of volunteer below the chairman of the board, there's actually a nomination process. So there's a
Okay.
formal nomination process, much like you would see in organizations where applications are reviewed and there's discussion about the candidate's capability, their history, that kind of thing.
Okay. Very, very fascinating. Okay, I still want to keep talking about this, but we're going to switch things over a little bit just because a number of our listeners are not going to be close to the Houston area. So maybe they are not able to volunteer. But what happens when they are looking for somebody to volunteer to be on their library committee or on their booster club or in their 4-H club? So what can other organizations, whether they are nonprofits or community groups or small businesses even, learn from how Rodeo Houston operates?
Jesse, one of the things we do, and you can do this on a big scale or a small scale, but one of the things we do is we actually have what's called a junior rodeo committee. So you have to be 21 to volunteer. Okay.
Okay.
But we have a junior rodeo committee that has like 630 kids that are between the ages of 16 and 20. And so what we do is just like anybody should do in their organization, we start early. So they can join the junior rodeo committee. And what we have them do is basically like intern with committees. So they get assigned to a committee, they get a mentor, and they get to experience serving on different committees. So they get a taste for what it's like to work on different committees. When they age out, we hope that the committees they have worked on and that they want to serve on will have gotten to know them and then will recruit them into their committees. And so it's not doable for all not-for-profits, but I will tell you, if you start early and you start building that engagement and attraction and show them what the art of the possible is, that is a great way to recruit people for the future. The other thing that we do is we have tremendously socially connected networks. So we have many generations of people that have worked with their families. So you'll hear a volunteer say, my great-grandfather started this committee. And then people volunteer. So it's using your network. If you're trying to find people, the best way to do that is to say, hey, you're a great volunteer. I saw you with your sisters. Might your sister be interested in volunteering at the library or what have you? So those two ways, to me, is what really makes the difference in our ability to engage people.
Along that topic, again, we mentioned burnout earlier, but I'm sure we've all seen volunteers who they've just gotten burnt out with all that they have given. How can you make sure that if you are leading an organization and you utilize volunteers, that you're not burning them out? Because again, we know it's a whole lot easier to keep them around than it is to go find new ones to replace them.
Yeah, that really differs by committee. But what I will tell you, what committees do a great job of is celebrating their volunteers. So they have lots of socials and lots of events where volunteers can just have a good time and relax so that it's not always work, work, work. We, of course, have people that burn out, but what we encourage, we have many, many volunteers on many different committees. So we might say, maybe you should take a break from this committee, right? Volunteer for another committee. We encourage that. So the experience is a little different. We have lots of people that just want to volunteer. They don't want to lead, right? They don't want to have, all that responsibility. They just want to do their shifts. And so I think, again, it's just like, how do you find the right thing for everyone so that you're not burning them out? But we do teach our leaders to recognize that burnout and to have open conversation with volunteers who might be struggling. Take a break, come back in a year. So we've had lots of volunteers that do that. Take a break, they'll come back, they join another committee, that kind of thing. So you're not also held to returning. So even though you make a commitment, we don't expect everybody to return every year because life happens.
That is super insightful. Thank you. Okay, we can't let you go without getting to our rapid fire round. So these are the questions that we ask every guest on the show. First question for you. What do you hope people remember most about you?
Well, personally, it's that I am a good mother and wife and grandmother. I have lots of grandbabies.
You don't look old enough to be a grandma. What kind of water are you drinking, Mel? You really are like the fountain of youth.
Thank you. That's very nice. But let's just say I started early, and I have 3 siblings and I want them to remember that, I was a good sister. I'm the eldest, so I have lots of responsibility. But that's really what I want people to remember.
Oh, great answer. Okay, what is a non-negotiable in your life?
Spending time with my family. Spending time with my husband and our children and our grandbabies. A lot of vacation is spent dedicated to them.
Oh.
So, yeah, that's really important to me, which is just back to something, Jesse, that's part of what I love about the rodeo. It's family friendly in multiple ways. It's not just family friendly in the way that you can come here, have a great day with your family, and it's affordable, but we support families, right? We encourage people to make that the priority. And so that's also why I love this place so much, because it allows me to make that non-negotiable real.
Oh, I love that. Okay. For the rest of our guests, the question is, if you were a professional athlete, what would your walk-up song be? But I'm going to switch it for you. And I'm going to ask you, of all of the Rodeo Houston concerts you have been to, which one was the most memorable?
So I'd have to say Journey.
Ooh.
Yeah. And this was Journey. They visited us like 3 years ago and I hadn't seen them. And of course, I know every word to every Journey song because I listened to that on, like my Walkman, aging myself. So best concert I've ever been. I think I cried.
Okay. So Journey, that was definitely the one.
Yes.
What is the smartest thing someone has ever told you?
Okay. So being in HR, there are a lot of things you have to do that are unpleasant. And I had a boss tell me one time, and it stuck with me. And she said, people will not remember how you brought them into the organization, but they will remember how you made them feel if they had to leave.
Ooh.
And so that has always stuck with me about, if someone has to leave an organization, that impacts their lives, their families, and you want to do it with dignity and kindness, regardless of what's happened. And that is a lesson that I carry around with me. I mean, that's probably been 20 years ago, but it is a lesson I carry around with me and I pass on to as many leaders as possible. And it has been tried and true for me.
Well, I'm so glad you shared that with me and with our listeners too. That is a fabulous consideration to keep in mind. Okay, last question for you for the day. Let's talk about favorite things. Do you have a favorite book or podcast, or maybe it's a product or a service, something that you swear by, a life hack, anything that's changed your life that you just want more people to know about?
So I don't have a favorite book, but I have a favorite author.
Okay.
Okay. And that is Brené Brown, who's all about leadership.
Yes.
And it never fails that she inspires me. So I listen to her podcasts. I read all her books. The one that just came out, I downloaded it as soon as it came out. She's fabulous. And I think she's also, from a female standpoint, is just such an inspiration for women and how to grow and be a leader in the workplace, regardless of what workplace it is. So that's my favorite author. My favorite product is Peloton.
Oh, okay. You're a Peloton girl. I love that. Are you like the bike, the tread, all the classes? What? Give us the details.
Yeah. So I started on the bike, got completely addicted, and then quickly got addicted to the other programs. So in particular, strength and yoga. And so I just love it. I love that it's so convenient and that I can do it whenever I want to. And it literally saved my mental health during COVID. So, so I swear by it. I love it and I recommend it to everybody.
Okay. Well, maybe if you guys are Peloton riders, maybe next time you're on a ride, you're going to have to look for Mel's handles, see if you're on the same ride as she is. Thank you so much for being here today. I am so thankful to get to sit with you and just talk about the magnitude of volunteering and how to encourage people to continue to volunteer and all of the elements that go into producing something as magnificent as Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. So thank you very much. You guys know you can find us back here next week. We are coming at you with a brand new episode of Leaders of the West. It is excellent. You guys are not going to want to miss it. So we will see you then. If you loved this episode, do us a favor and share it with someone else who might find just as much value in it as you did. We're on a mission to continue to grow and strengthen the future of agriculture and Western industries, and you spreading the word helps us make more of a positive impact. It also makes a big difference when you take a minute to go rate and review the show. We can't thank you enough for listening, for sharing, and for loving Ag and Western as much as we do. We'll see you back here for our next episode.